everybody. Welcome to Revival Town Podcast. I'm Chuck Tate. That's Andy King.
How you doing, mate?
I'm always good hanging with you, mate.
Look at you.
You know,
oh, man.
You know.
I tell you what, it's the love in the room.
so special.
Oh, what have you been doing? Any hobbies, things like that? I got a new hobby I was going to get to, but I didn't know if you had any hobbies.
Okay, well, my hobby lately has been sleeping. No, honestly, I'm into running. I like to run. That's my therapeutic. I went from hating running, but over the last few years, I've made it a habit to run regularly. And even I got bit by a dog a few weeks ago, which we talked about.
Oh, man,
mentioned
that was funny.
So I bought some dog mace.
Really?
It comes with a Velcro band straps to your wrist. And now I feel safe because honestly, I've had a little bit of PTSD when I'm running. 2 weeks after I got bit, I was on this trail near the river.
Yeah.
And this guy had 2 full-grown German Shepherds, and they were not on leashes. And I had this anxiety, and he was talking to them and was firm with them, and they stayed. But I was freaked out. I thought I was going to bust out the mace. But and then also about a week ago, a dog was on a chain, but it came flying at me to hit that chain. It wanted to destroy me. Even though it was on a chain, it freaked me out. So no joke. I stopped, turned around, and pointed at it, and I went, "No!" I'm not joking. Everybody in the neighborhood probably heard me. And that dog stopped, froze, and backed up and laid down.
Oh, my.
I haven't had a problem since. I'm like, I'm the boss.
Is that how you talk to your kids as well?
Yeah, well, yeah. They have dad mace. No, but I enjoy running, so that's my deal. But you're into Legos, man. You were just telling me about
I know, this is going to sound so stupid, but, during my sabbatical time, and actually, it wasn't just sabbatical. I think, did we start it in? No, it was sabbatical. Yeah, I wanted to do something different and something with my daughter Joy. We talk a lot about the boys in LA, and a lot of it's because they're in church work and things like that. But I often feel bad about Joy because she's one of the coolest gals that is on the planet, and so I spend a lot of time with her at the minute because she is learning to drive, and so she has to do so many hours, you know what I mean, with an adult,
Yep, I remember that. So you do Legos as she's driving?
No, so stupid. But
to calm your nerves.
But we have a lot of fun, and I am not a fan of country music, but she has got Casey Musgraves going on all the time in the car, and so
that's funny because Savannah's in the country, so I jam to country now, man.
Yeah. I don't know if I jam to it, but
let me back up. I tolerate it. No, I'm kidding. I'm joking.
Yeah, it's either Casey Musgraves or the band Laney that is from LA, and she loves them. She's going to be going and see them, and so anyway. So we were like, could we do something together? And so we started buying these Lego kits, certain, whether it be a movie kit or a car or, whatever.
Or last week's episode, we talked about Stranger Things a little bit. So there's even a Stranger Things Lego kit, right?
It just came out.
That looks insane.
I'm not spending the money. It's like $350, $400, but
for Legos.
But is like Lego the upside down world. It's got the car and all that. So we haven't done that, but we've done some others. And I'll tell you, and I mentioned it to you, and you're like, "No, that's not for me." But it's relaxing. I find it very relaxing. It does.
I'm too hyper for Legos, man. I know. But it sounds cool. My son Ashton was really into Legos, and if he was into it again, it's something that I could do with him. We do play basketball together. We love and enjoy that. But Legos are cool. I just growing up. I think ADD, ADHD. I don't know. I've never been diagnosed, but I don't know if I can do Legos. I never could do models.
Right.
I didn't have the.
That's what I did during COVID. I did models like with the glue and airplanes and.
Yeah, no way. I would like pick him up and drop kick him. Well, hey, we got. Speaking of that, we have really cool.
I want to see how you're going to tie this all in right now.
This guy got drop kicked out of a plane. You're going to hear our guest today.
Oh, man.
He got slingshotted out of it. No.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. No, he just jumped out of a plane a couple weeks ago. And he's going to talk about the experience, but he has an incredible testimony. It really is. It's a God story.
I said this to you after we got done. This guy's one of the best storytellers I've ever heard and ever had on this podcast.
Yeah, you're right.
I am, and I love the storyteller type guy.
Yep.
Man, this guy can really bring you into a story. And for him, this was, yes, a at the beginning, a sad story, but yet God had a way of bringing it all around. And so why don't you sit back and relax and enjoy this conversation? Oh,
sit back and relax with a spot of sun tea. Get some sun tea.
Where did that come from?
He's talking about having some sun tea.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Look, you were listening.
Yeah. I took some notes. We'll talk about that at the end.
Yeah.
So I didn't mean to cut you off there. Sorry.
Oh, you did, though. You ruined the introduction. Man.
Yeah, this is what separates our podcast from others. We have a good time. We have a 12-minute intro before our guest, just talking about Legos and getting bit by dogs.
Oh, well, why don't you sit back and relax and enjoy this conversation with Keith.
This podcast is part of the Edify Podcast Network. Edify is a faith-inspiring app that brings together thousands of the best Christian podcasts in one place for your listening enjoyment. Cut through the noise and grow your faith by diving into the world's top Christian podcasts today. Download the Edify app for free from the App Store or Google Play, or by going to edify.app. That's EDIFI.app.
All right, everyone, it's time for another conversation on Revival Town Podcast. Our guest today, Keith Robinson, is an associate for communications at Slingshot Group. Keith loves coming alongside churches and nonprofits to help build remarkable teams. Keith also serves as an executive coach at Novus Global, where he coaches executives, business leaders, entertainers, and professional athletes. Keith received his master's degree in Christian ministry and leadership from Hope International University and is a published author, speaker, organizational leadership coach, and staffing consultant. Keith resides in Southern California with his wife, Samantha, and their two sons, Joel and Jude. Keith, it is an honor to have you on Revival Town. Welcome.
Hey, thanks, guys. It's so great to be with you this morning.
Man, it's great to have you here. And we have a mutual friend, Dave Mudd, who's been on the podcast, longtime friend of myself. We went to high school together, Bible college together. And, of course, Andy was connected with him through the church that his dad was a part of when Dave was his youth pastor. And so cool to have that mutual connection right off the bat.
Absolutely. Yeah, love that guy. My wife and our family, we were actually a part of Dave Mudd's church congregation, Hope Collective in Lake Zurich for a number of years. And we just love that community and love Dave and Natalie, great people.
Well, listen, before we even get into your story, before we go anywhere, you jumped out of a plane a couple weeks ago. I got to hear about that. So, forget the leadership, all the pastoral stuff. You dove out of a plane.
Yeah, a perfectly good airplane with no mechanical failures that I knew of. And I jumped out at 13,000 feet. This was not a bucket list item for me. I have a bucket list, and I've pursued a lot of those things over the years. But skydiving was never one of them because it just felt like the risk wasn't worth the reward. That's how I always calculated it in my head. But I had a good friend of mine who was turning 40, and he called me and he gave me this big, kind of like midlife crisis, got to do this. We don't know how long we're going to be here. It was one of those kind of things. And he was like, I just got to have you do this with me. And there were 2 or 3 other guys. So I really caved into peer pressure here, guys. That's really what this is about. But it was seriously the most thrilling and exciting thing I've ever done in that way, like in terms of thrill. the older I've gotten, when I was younger, I don't know about you guys, I loved roller coasters. But the older I've gotten, like the idea of riding a roller coaster, I can think of 1,000 things I'd rather do, and all of them involve me dying. You know, like I have such a headache when I'm done. Like I'm miserable for like 2 days. I got motion sickness.
Man.
So I don't enjoy that anymore. And this was that without the jarring, without the headache, and without the nausea. I mean, it was just 6 minutes of bliss. Is all I can say.
So would you do it again? I mean, you know, is it one of those things where you're like, I'll do that again?
Yeah. You know what? I don't know. Not everyone in the audience is a tattoo person, but if you've ever gotten a tattoo, when you're done, at least for me, I'm like, I want another one right now. Like there's the fear and sort of the discomfort that goes with it. But when you're done, the adrenaline's so high. It's like, when can I get the next one? That's how I felt when I hit the ground. It was like, when can we go back up and do this again? So,
cool. I have no intention to do a parachute jump.
Yeah.
I mean, I would love the feel of it. You know what I mean?
I get nervous flying, so I'm not getting out of the plane.
Getting up there, that's the and I love flying, but I don't know. I mean, perhaps I need to conquer my fear on that, but yeah.
Last thing I'll say on it. So I was the last one on the plane, which meant I was the first one out. Oh. And because I was tandem, I had to go over it and open the door at 13,000 feet.
Oh my gosh.
And you know, so you have these images in your head that you're going to get sucked out of the plane.
Yeah.
Which is not true because the wind almost knocks you back into it, you know? But yeah, so I had the privilege of opening the door and being the first out, man. And it was pretty wild. So you saw the fear in my face even on my social media.
So you did a video, you did a video and everything, right?
Yeah,
it, so
people could the video service.
People could check that. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's on his Instagram.
Okay,
so great. People need to go follow you and check it out, watch it. Well, at the end of the podcast, we'll have you give all that information. So yeah, you can watch it. Man.
I will.
Yeah,
definitely
yeah,
will.
it's good.
Definitely will.
Good stuff. You know, I'm a guy who on a plane one time there was really bad turbulence, plane dropped, and everybody was freaking out, and including me, and I just out loud cried out to God, and I really did. I'm like, I like Jesus, and I wasn't cussing, man, I was praying, and this old lady
there's a fine line
is like,
don't
worry, honey, you're not going anywhere till it's your time. I'm like, what if it's the pilot's time? They're all going down. No, kidding. No. So Keith, tell us your story, man. You have a really remarkable testimony. It's powerful, and I know that you have traveled all throughout the country, and you have done a number of school assemblies back in the day, and you had, used your platform to share your story. I think it'd be great for you to give us that here at the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and Chuck, just to say this out loud too, I had the privilege of share my story once at your church. It's been a number of years ago, but I remember that. And so for me, kind of the backstory, the last 21 years I've spent motivating people, speaking in public schools, churches, conferences, camps. I've been a pastor, been a youth pastor. But going back to even my childhood, I grew up in an environment where, there wasn't a church far from my house, and I attended a church a few times, but I didn't really grow up with a knowledge of God and who he was, who Jesus was. Understood baby Jesus because he brought gifts at Christmas, but beyond that, like there was no real foundation or relationship with God in our home. And so growing up for me, life was challenging in the sense that both of my parents were really underemployed. My mom unemployed for many years, and my father underemployed. Part of that reason was he was sick. So from the earliest time I could remember, my dad was in and out of the hospital. He was diagnosed with diabetes in his late 20s. It was type 1. And so because of that, he had basically neglected his body and his health for many years, not knowing what was going on. So as I entered into like elementary school age and beyond, my father was in and out of the hospital a lot. At 38, he had a stroke that left him paralyzed on the left side of his body. And to make matters even more challenging as a child growing up, I grew up in a home where verbal and physical abuse was just a part of the everyday. So there was a lot of turmoil and tension in the home. And growing up with that, with a father who would express his anger in physical ways, and oftentimes having my mom having to pull him off of me in his anger, and just in that traumatic environment, sort of growing up, I developed just a real strong, like, rebellious streak toward anyone in authority. Yeah. So that by the time I was 11, 12 years old, I was going to school intentionally looking for trouble, right? Trying to cause it, really acting out of my pain, what was happening at home. And what's crazy is that, like, a lot of people didn't know like what was going on. So there was this whole other side of our family that really no one saw. And so in that process of my father getting sick and having a stroke at 38, I was 13 at the time. When his health really began to deteriorate and decline, at 13, I was making decisions that were going to land me in jail or dead. Like, that was the path that I was on at 13 already. So began to use illegal drugs, shoplifting, breaking and entering, like just this constant push to break the rules, to break the law. And eventually that kind of thing kept with me. So I'd get in trouble, and I got arrested for the first time at 13 for shoplifting. And then the probation started, so I was on probation during my teenage years. I had to go meet with my probation officer. And so it just kind of became this like label that I carried, that I was this at-risk youth. And so that's what I picked up. That's what I carried. And I sort of lived into that identity for many years. But really the worst day of my life happened when I was 15 years of age. I was at school, and that afternoon I was supposed to come home after school. I decided not to, just went to a friend's house instead. And I guess my mom had been trying to get a hold of me pretty frantically. And she finally found out where I was. She called my friend's house. We didn't have cell phones at this point. It's 1997. And 1995. And she said, Keith, I'm coming to get you. And I was angry because she was coming to get me. It was a Friday afternoon. I was going to hang out and party with my friends. I hung up the phone, and a few minutes later I hear honking, outside. It was my mom. And I walked outside, and I saw my mom sitting in the passenger seat of my aunt's car. And I thought that was weird. My aunt was with my mom, and they were coming to get me. And as I approached the car, I could tell that my mom was like devastated. She had mascara running down her face, down her cheeks. Her hair was messed up. And as I approached the window, I just remember my mom putting her hands over her face like this as she looked at me. And I could see the tears jump through the gaps in her fingers. And then she rolled down the window and said, Keith, get in the car. We have to go. And I just stood there frozen, knowing that something bad had happened. And I said, Mom, I'm not getting in the car till you tell me what happened. Kind of went back and forth like that. And finally, she just got out of the car and stood right in front of me. And she said, Keith, your dad's dead. Get in the car. We have to go. Wow. And so I think just in her shock of everything that was happening and her frustration with me, and that's how I found out. Wow. And so it felt like someone had taken their fist and balled it up and just hit me in the solar plexus as hard as they could and knocked the wind out of me. And got in the back of that car just numb. And I remember driving to a family friend's house where a bunch of people were gathered, to console the family. And I walked in this room, and there's all these relatives and friends of the family, and I just felt so completely alone in that moment in this crowded room of people. I'll never forget that feeling. And it was in that moment that I decided that that I had a death wish, and that that I would be the most unlovable person and kid that anyone had ever met. And so I turned all of that all that pain into anger. And that really fueled me for the next couple of years as I lived a really rebellious life, and a pretty wild life, and a dangerous life. Eventually I got arrested again, this time for a DUI and possession of drugs. I was taken to jail, spent overnight, and then I was facing some serious charges at that point because of all the other things that I had done. And they were just ready to throw the book at me, frankly. So I was on house arrest. And it was during that time, at 17 years of age, 2 years after my dad died, I was on house arrest. And I remember distinctly, there was a particular Saturday morning where my mom had left the house to go to her job. After my father died, she had to go back and figure out how to get a job. And so she did. And she worked hard as a single mom, and then eventually remarried. But it was during that stint on house arrest where I pulled a gun out from under my bed. And I remember holding that gun in my hand and contemplating suicide and thinking to myself that there was nothing worth living for anymore at all. And then this thought came to me. I have an older brother and a younger brother who to this day are my best friends in the world. And my younger brother is 6 years younger than me, and it was pretty traumatic for him to lose his dad at the age that he did as well. Yeah. And I just remember thinking, if my brother comes in and finds me in the room like this, if I've taken my life, he'll never recover from that, and it's not fair to him. And that thought kept me alive for that moment. Wow. I put the gun under the bed, and within a half hour of doing that, in my depression, the phone rang, and it was my mother. And she was calling from her work, and she said, I just got a phone call from my friend Leanne, and she wants to come by the house and talk to you. Now, I'm 17, and the only thing I know about my mom's friend Leanne is that she is a religious person. Because she would come over to my mom's house, and they would sit on the porch and sip sweet tea and talk about Jesus. And I wanted nothing to do with that. And so I was angry at my mom when she told me that Leanne was coming over, because I knew she was going to come and preach at me or something. And so I just probably cursed at my mom. She's not a good kid at the time, and hung up the phone. But I couldn't go anywhere. I was on house arrest. So I knew I was in trouble, and so I didn't want to get in any more trouble at this point. And so I stayed there, and within probably an hour, the doorbell rang. I go to the door, and there she is, my mom's friend Leanne. I'd met her, a handful of times in my life. We never had any meaningful conversation. I mean, how often you talk to your friend's parents? And so, or your parents' friends, sorry. And so it's just one of those things where I'm looking at her, and she's standing on my doorstep. She's about 5 feet tall. She's got a Bible in her hand. And she says, Keith, I'm here to pray for you today, as soon as I open the door. And without hesitating, I just looked at her and I said, I hate God. You can leave. That was my greeting to her. Yeah. So I was shook, though, when she told me, immediately when I said that, she said, Keith, you can hate God. That's okay. But I want you to know that Jesus loves you and has a plan for your life. Now, I know listeners that I hear this are like, oh, really? But for a 17-year-old kid who was hopeless in the world, the idea that a God, that there's a God who could love us unconditionally that's an incredible invitation and thought for someone who is searching and hurting. And so those words to me hit me like a baseball bat in the chest. And I walked back to my bedroom, to my domain, and this woman, this crazy woman, she walks in my house uninvited and follows me all the way to my bedroom. I get in my bed, because this is what 17-year-olds do, when they're on house arrest. I get in my bed and I just roll over and pull the covers over me.
Wow.
And she comes into my bedroom and she takes the covers off of me. And she just says, Keith, I'm not going to preach at you today. I just want to pray for you. She puts her hand on my shoulder and she says the sweetest, simplest prayer: Jesus, speak to Keith's heart and change his life. And when she said those words, that was the first moment that I knew that God was real. I felt it. I sensed it. Faith came alive in me. And it was a mustard seed faith. It wasn't a lot, but it was enough. And here's how I know. For the next 2 weeks, she left my house, left the Bible at the foot of my bed with an invitation to attend her church. And the reason I know is because every night after that, I prayed, Jesus, if you're real, because I added that to my prayer. I never really prayed before, but I said, Jesus, if you're real, speak to my heart and change my life. And God was up to that challenge, guys.
Yeah.
Every night I prayed that. There wasn't an immediate change in me. So the next day I still was making some of the bad decisions that I was making, but I was starting to feel uncomfortable then.
Yeah.
Like things just didn't feel the same, And so, I knew I had to go to church. So I'd open the Bible. I tried to read this Bible that she gave me, and I still have it on my shelf over here. It's a parallel Bible, King James on one side and NIV on the other, because everybody knows drug addicts aren't going to read it KJV. So it's like
before version, right? You can just pick any translation you want.
Way before that. So we, I decided like the only answer to this is to like go to church and figure out what this is about. And so I looked at that invitation that was in the, in that Bible for a couple of weeks. And I finally called my probation officer up, that I'd had since I was 12. And I said, Mark, I want to go to church. And can I go to this church? It's not too far from my house. And I remember Mark laughing at me, my probation officer, literally. He just laughed out loud because I'd run away from home. There's other parts of the story. I'd run away from home like 20 times. So any chance I'd get to like get away, I was gone. Right. And then they'd always keep bringing me back. So he just thought I was going to run. It was my way of getting out, and I was going to use church as a scapegoat. And I begged him for 2 weeks to go to church, and finally he relented. So my mom drives me to church on a Sunday morning. I've never been to church on my own volition. And I walk into this small church, and there are all these people in the foyer. And as soon as I walk in, they all put their arms around me. They all tell me how glad they are to be there. I mean, we look nothing alike at this point, right? This does not look like my crowd. But there was such genuine love and care. And you got to understand, for a young man living in the world wondering, is he loved? That was, that was just exactly what I needed. It was the care, the genuine care. People can feel that if it's real.
Yeah, I can feel it.
Yeah.
And the woman that invited me to church, she was there, Leanne, and she said, hey, why don't you come sit with our family? And I was like, no, I'm good. And so I just went over and sat by myself in this random church.
Wow.
And the music came on, and man, I didn't get it. I did not get it. I mean, I'd literally been to a Pearl Jam concert like 2 nights before. And we're singing about the blood of Jesus,
Wow.
And so I'm confused. And then the pastor comes to the pulpit, the platform, and he's this big man with just this jolly, joyful sort of demeanor, right? And he comes up and he starts talking about the story of the prodigal son, which I'd never heard.
Wow.
And I'm thinking this story is not real because there's no father that's going to like act this way toward his kid. Because my image of dad is you mess up and there's a price to pay.
Yeah.
And you shame the family and all, right? So there's all this that I'm carrying. And then all of a sudden I'm getting this image of God, this beautiful picture of Father that is so invitational, that is so warm and inviting that I literally couldn't resist. And so he talks about this. And the whole time I'm sitting there, guys, I'm literally thinking, who told this man I'm coming to church?
Yeah. Right.
Right? Like, I know we've all had those moments, but this is my first time in church. So to have that thought the first time you're in a church is like, it's mind blowing. And so I didn't know, of course, like what was actually going on, that God's Spirit was drawing me, that there was something that was happening, that God was for me in a way that I couldn't even imagine. And so as that plan is unfolding and as the message is being spoken, like faith is growing in me. That mustard seed faith starts to grow. Maybe God can do something with my life. Maybe there is more than what I've been living for. Maybe there's purpose and identity and meaning and beauty and all of that. And so I just stood up because he gave an invitation at the end. He's like, anybody that wants to receive this love, I'm going to invite you to stand. I literally jumped to my feet and I thought for sure the entire church would stand because I'm like, who wouldn't want this?
Right. Wow. Yeah.
And I look around and I'm the only one standing. And I realized like, oh, everybody else has already made this decision. It's just me today.
Thank God for Leanne.
It's not over. So I'm frozen, right? And the pastor's now he's doing his like best, like, and if you're standing, come on down. It's like the Price is Right moment. And I'm not moving, dude. I do not want to go up in front of this church because I don't know if he's going to bring me on stage and like have me confess. Because like my image of Christianity is kind of like Catholic, kind of high church. So I like this is all new. This is a very like charismatic church. So I'd never seen anything like this before. And so I'm frozen, and I think the whole church is like waiting for me to go. We're like on chorus 2, the hymn. and so Leanne just walks across the aisle because she's in the service, and she puts her arm around me and she says, Keith, I know you're going through a really hard time, but I want you to know that I'm here for you. And if you want to go down front, I'll go with you. And man, I stepped out of that aisle, or stepped out into the aisle behind that pew. And as soon as my foot hit the aisle, a bucket of tears came rushing out of me as I walked to the front of that church and bowed my knee. And nothing wrong with the sinner's prayer. But I prayed all of my sins out in that moment. I hope there weren't a lot of people standing close.
And if you're just joining us, we want to welcome you to the Sweet Tea Sinners and Jesus podcast.
If this story sounds too good to be true,
man,
it's not. And the reality is there was an immediate transformation in my life. Now, that transformation is still playing out.
Right.
But I got to tell you, 25 years later, that decision has not worn off. It continues to be the fuel and the purpose of my life. And so couple cool things came out of that. Number one, I was able to go back and graduate high school. In fact, my life turned around quite dramatically after that. Like, I was a failing student with like a 1.3 GPA, real high achiever, And then when God got a hold of my life, I went back to high school my senior year, and I had a 4.0.
Wow.
I lettered in a sport in wrestling. I'd been kicked off the team the year before, and so was able to come back and won like Comeback of the Year award for that.
Wow.
Homecoming King my senior year. I started a Bible study on my high school campus that reached over 100 students for Christ. There was a real movement. It wasn't just me. There were a couple other students my age that we all came to faith around the same time. And most, if not all, those people are still journeying with Jesus and in ministry and cool stuff. But the coolest part of that story is that 5 years later, after I made that decision, I married the daughter of Leanne, the woman who came in.
Oh, what?
For me. So my wife, Samantha, is her daughter.
That is cool.
So she had no idea when she came in my bedroom that day to pray that she was getting a son-in-law out of the deal.
Man.
Wow, that's amazing.
That is amazing. Yeah, and I remember now. So when you came to share your story and to minister at Rock Church, the church that I lead, I was out of state. I wasn't there. I was gone.
You do that a lot when you invite speakers. I've been to your place before, and you didn't show up.
Actually, I'm usually here. But
it must be just when I'm speaking. Then
I know. Usually, when you speak, I'm like, okay, I'm taking a break. But no, so we have to have you back. We're gonna have to have you back, and this time I'll be here. I promise. But thanks for sharing that, man. Taking us on that journey, and I know people are listening right now. That's heavy, and you can't ever give up on praying for your kids. And I always tell our church, it doesn't matter if your kids are out of the house. Nobody is too far gone. I don't care how old they are, right? Your parent is not too far gone. Every single person is one encounter with Jesus away from a different life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
we are never without hope.
Right.
We are never without hope.
And now you're sharing hope everywhere you go, and you're working for Slingshot Group, and you started your consulting company, and you're doing coaching. And so for our listeners that don't know anything about Slingshot Group, what's Slingshot Group?
Yeah, so Slingshot Group is this amazing collective of leaders who have come together to serve the church in staffing. And so about 15, almost 16 years ago now, our two co-founders were guys who had been friends and colleagues in the worship arts space for many years, had built quite a network, and had also been on the professional side of producing Christian music. And they began to notice this, again, 15, 16 years ago, there was a real need for churches to find quality called leaders who could take that church, that ministry into the future. And if you think about this, like 15 years ago, like think about the worship wars that were happening in most churches, like the battles in music, the challenges associated with moving into modern contemporary expressions. And it really is, it takes a deft hand of leadership to help a church navigate change like that. And so Slingshot really became a solution and answer to helping the church as it transitioned in that space. But what started out as one church, helping that church find a quality called worship leader turned into 2 and 3 and 4. And eventually within the first couple of years, those churches started coming back saying, hey, this model you put together to help us understand our need and the type of staff person we need to fill this role, we need that for our student ministry. We need that for our children's ministry. And so Slingshot then began to expand into these different spaces of ministry by inviting leaders, associates onto our team like myself who have a network, who have experience in those spaces. You won't find this on our website, but we always say it takes one to know one. So all of our people on our team are grassroots ministry people, they get it. So when we work with churches and say, what is it that you need? There's a direct understanding because we've been there. We've been in those trenches before. So I think that helps us to both assess and understanding that, the challenges related to that local church. So we'll often go in and a church will say, this is the role that we need, the leader we need. So we do a lot of groundwork to develop a strong profile for that position, to understand the church. And then we go out to our network, which is sort of a collective network. We say, when you get one of us, you get all of us. So we have like 60 associates on our team. So anytime one of us are pointing a search or helping a church find a leader, we kind of have that resource, that collective pool of network leaders that we lean into. So it's a fascinating world that, any given week, Slingshot is talking to dozens and dozens of churches through all of our associates. So that collective learning also results in some content that we coach and empower and equip churches as well in these various areas of leadership.
Wow, so good.
Yeah,
I was just looking at, and I was listening to what you were saying, but I was just looking on your website, and a friend of ours is on there as far as someone that can help the local church, just like what you're doing, Keith. And it was Drew Powell from Crosspoint.
Okay, right on.
Is on there, and guys like yourself and Drew, who's been on the podcast. This is a vital role to be able to take the church to the next step. What are some of the challenges that you see with regards to the church right now, and what you do? Perhaps weren't there a few years ago, but now it feels like a different challenge. Can you just open that up a bit?
Absolutely. Yeah. Great question. I think that we all know that a couple of years ago, churches experienced the greatest disruption to weekly worship attendance in modern history. So we watched that, at Slingshot Group. And our posture during the pandemic was, how do we pivot to supporting our church partners as they make the transitions? And so because I oversee, at the time, was overseeing digital communications at Slingshot, still very much a part of that world. But because that was something I was doing, like, our world really had a lot of activity because we were helping churches, like, here's how to use YouTube, like here's how to get a great live stream. Like, there was just a lot of practical nuts and bolts.
Here's a camera.
Exactly.
For some churches, they weren't even doing live stream.
Yeah, hit record.
Yeah. And it was one of those things where overnight, every pastor in America had to become like a televangelist, or they thought they did. And it was scary for a lot of leaders.
Sure.
And so we were able to pivot and help. So I think that one of the things that we've seen, and I got to give credit to my team, because a lot of this is collective learning. But one of the things that one of my teammates recently said is that right now in the church, the needs are the same for the church of 500 and 5,000, like never before. And by that, I think what he's referring to is this idea that, in particular, digital ministry, communication, social media, websites, all of these things, they're really vehicles and tools for us to build a bridge and connection in our community. And so I'll get calls from churches this week that are sub 500, and they're like, we need a digital communication strategist. Well, used to that conversation was reserved for the church of 5,000 and above.
Yeah, sure.
And now, because of technology and how important that is to the work that we do, I think the skill set of what's in demand now for younger leaders has shifted and has changed. And so we're starting to see that. My concern has been, and this has been for a while, and I want to be sensitive how I say this, because I think traditional theological training is still important to our work. But I also wonder how our institutions can be better equipping leaders for the needs in the church today and tomorrow. And I'm not sure that we have.
Sure.
And so what I'm watching is oftentimes some of the best and the brightest are finding opportunities in other spaces where I really think the church could be creating more space for leaders with these skills, especially in digital and communications.
Yeah.
Because I think this is the greatest opportunity for the evangelization of the world that we've ever had right now.
Yeah.
Because of the way technology can take us to so many places, so many audiences. And so for the church to begin to equip and empower these skills and orient them toward Great Commission, I think that's the real opportunity for the church.
Good stuff. Well,
that's great.
Why are so many pastors quitting?
Yeah, that's a great question, Chuck. I think that it's not one issue. I think there's a multitude of issues. And I got my master's degree in organizational leadership. We did a lot of research on local church pastors during that season. That 2.5 years of research was really looking at what are the challenges, the unique challenges that pastors are facing. And I believe it was 2017 that Barna put out the study that said the average age of pastors in America was like 55 plus. And I would venture to say that number has gotten older over the last 4 years. I don't know, 5 years. I don't know exactly, but I would venture to say it's gotten like it keeps getting older. Really? So we have an aging clergy. And I think without an urgent response from the senior leaders, the gray hairs, myself included, to look back and do for others now what our mentors did for us. Wow, I think we're at a really critical moment. And I think because there's an isolation that pastors feel right now, most of my friends are pastors. A lot of my friends are pastors. And I see many of them struggling with burnout, with exhaustion. And you know this, Chuck. It is a landmine to step on stage these days and to say anything that's in the news one way or the other, because people are so triggered. And I think there are so many landmines in culture right now. And I think that we have mapped our cultural expectations of leaders onto our pastors, that they be perfect, that they always say the right thing, that they not be vulnerable or have a moment of weakness. And I think also because of social media, so there is a dark side to the opportunity.
Sure.
I think there has been an immense amount of pressure where we're comparing our behind the scenes to other people's highlight reels.
Right.
And that's a discouragement factor for pastors who may look across the street or across the pond or wherever and see churches that are doing amazing things and think to themselves, well, I'm behind. I don't have it. I'm never going to get there. My people aren't, right? So then all of a sudden that comparison begins to erode the integrity of their calling and the intensity at which they're pursuing it. And I think the cultural pressure that's been mapped onto leaders in the church today is something that if pastors don't sort out, they will find themselves falling prey to that pretty quickly. And it is an exhausting and almost like it's untenable. You can't continue to live under that pressure. You will crack.
Yeah.
And so,
and adding the pressure of trying to figure out church after COVID is even, you were giving a statistic there, 2017. Now add everything that went on where a lot of churches are way down in number. A lot of pastors left during COVID because they couldn't keep going. There was a few churches in our area that just shut down.
Yeah.
And what that does for then the pastor, like you said, is now I failed. It was going so well. This thing happened. I couldn't hold it together. and that then creates this chasm within a city as well for the church that was there that is now not there. So have you seen, obviously, with what you do, COVID has really thrown a wrench in the works. But are you seeing any light as well? That's the question I wanted to come to.
Are things going to get better?
Yes. I mean, the church will be victorious, right? And I want to make sure that that I'm not saying that in a way that just takes our foot off the gas of what we've been called to do.
Sure.
So I did some research on this, and I was thinking about like the diminishing returns that you were referring to, Andy. It's like we're putting in more time and energy and effort, pastors are these days, and seemingly seeing less. And so what do you do in a season like that? Like, how do you continue? And so I think part of it is understanding, I think there's 4 different audiences. If I could just go here for a second.
Yeah.
I think there's that we've got to be mindful of. And I think if we try a one size fits all approach to ministry like we used to do, I think that is going to be to our detriment, because I think there are different audiences, and these audiences have different needs. And the first audience is the faithful. I mean, these are the people that never left your church, right? They proved the 80-20 principle was alive and well. Like they sustained the budget through their faithful participation in giving and worship. They were there online. They were the first to show up at the in-person gathering.
Yes.
When things got tough, they were like the remnant, right? The Bible word. And so thank God for those people. And what I would say to a pastor is, whatever you do, don't take those people for granted. In fact, create a rhythm and engagement for those people that extends beyond the weekend, and help them engage digitally, empower them to go out and to share and to lead Bible studies, because to me, those are the people that you can unleash and will be a huge part of, the rebound. The second audience, quickly, the dropout. These are the people that decided they're not coming back to church. They were already on the fence, and at least for the foreseeable future, it was their opportunity to cut bait. Barna did this thing, and I found this stat just a second ago, that 3 months into the pandemic, 32% of Christians stopped attending church during COVID altogether. So a third of the people just said, I'm out. And so that was sort of it. And so now, culturally speaking, we're living in a time where many nominally religious people, which is what those people would probably call themselves, that's actually more of the norm, like nominally religious people. So I think you have the dropout. And I would say to the church that's trying to reconnect with the dropout, shame is not going to work. I think that it's reminding those people the value of community, the importance of having a mission bigger than themselves, because it's really just kind of a selfish act. It's like, it's me, it's my needs, it's what I want. That's the dropout. Right. So I think it's reminding them the importance of those things and the power of community. Third, the fearful. These are people that were like, something happened in COVID. Like there was like a fear of interaction and like a social isolation that came out of that. And I think there's just been like this hesitancy for people to come back. And I think there are genuinely people who have been like afraid. And I think as COVID, as we've seen other strains come out, and they're less like, destructive, if you will, I think people have become less fearful, but I still say there's a lot of fearful people in our community in general. And I think that's something to really be mindful of as a leader. And then finally is the cautious, not necessarily fearful, but they're the people that are like, no, you go first and I'll follow you. And so I think in a lot of ways, it's about being proactive and communicating the changes that your church is doing, the things that you're up to, reminding people why. And again, I think this is an opportunity for reinvention. We don't get very many as a church. Like, think about it. Like, how long?
Good. This is gold.
Yeah. So that's what I would say. It's an opportunity for reinvention and to look at those audiences in a fresh way and say, how can we be positioning ourselves to connect with these people?
Brilliant.
That is great stuff. So I was taking notes.
I was just saying, Chuck's fingers were going really fast over there, and I knew it was he was taking notes.
Yeah,
either that or he's on Instagram.
So I'm going to sum that up: 4 different audiences: the faithful, the dropout, the fearful, the cautious. So all pastors, lay leaders, church leaders that are listening, it really is important. And I think the key is, you said something, and I wrote it down, and we don't always, and by we as church leaders in general and pastors, you said to communicate the changes that we've made, so the people that are the fearful and the cautious will feel more comfortable and coming back.
That's brilliant.
So great stuff.
That's brilliant. Yeah. Well, Keith, we want to thank you for coming on, and obviously this is your first time, so you may not know this, but we always ask our guests to close in prayer for us, and I especially think with what you've just mentioned with regards to the leader that is struggling during this time and trying to navigate this season. If you could pray into that, I think that would be really good. If you would.
Yeah, I'd be honored to pray for our leaders. Let's do that now.
Thanks.
Gracious Heavenly Father, thank you for the privilege that we get to serve you. Thank you for the message of hope that we have found in you, and that message you have also entrusted us to share with others and with the world. And God, we just want to take a moment, and we want to pray and lift up the leaders of our churches and our faith communities and houses of worship. God, I just pray for an infusion of strength. God, I pray that there would be a reaffirmation of the calling and the purpose for which you have set these leaders apart. Lord, I pray for just a powerful experience of community for these leaders. I know many of them are living and feeling as though they are in isolation. So, Lord, I pray that you would send encouraging voices into their life. Send them errands who can hold up their arms as the battle is being fought. God, I just pray over these leaders in our country as they lead our churches, that you would protect them from the vices and the schemes of the evil one.
Yeah.
Lord, I pray over the shepherds in our country, in the world, Lord, that people that are listening to this, that they would feel and know that you are for them, that you are with them, and that you will lead them and guide them into victory. Yes. Lord, we commit these leaders to your care, and we ask for your protection in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Well, Keith, thank you so much for that, and thank you for sharing your story as well. I know that is really going to resonate with some folks that may be listening, maybe going through some things with family members or kids, or so I just want to thank you for that.
It's going to give hope to all those praying moms.
Absolutely, and we want people to be able to connect with you and Slingshot. And what is the best way for people to just be able to perhaps follow what you're doing, the type of things that you're doing, and with Slingshot as well?
Yeah, you can just find me on Instagram. That's probably the best way. Keith M. Robinson. You'll see it. There's a skydiving video right there. That's like my first image. So if it's another Keith Robinson, you'll know it because it's not skydiving. But yeah, find me there. And then I talk on my page often about the work that I'm doing with Slingshot and Novus and the nonprofit I serve. So
great.
Cool.
Right. Well, it's the big three. The big three is the three questions we ask our guests with regards to anything but what we've talked about, really. So, so you want to go first, Chuck?
You know what? You can go first this time.
All right. Okay. Yeah, so first, you had mentioned that you lived in Chicago area, right? Lake Zurich area.
Mm-hmm.
What was the go-to pizza place for you in Chicago?
Oh man, easy. Luminati's. Luminati's all day long.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I bought a pie, throw down a pie, get a pie.
Yeah, I love it. I miss it. I'm in Southern California, and they don't know how to do pizza here.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I was out.
In fact, my friend sent me a picture of his pizza pie 2 days ago, and I had to pull myself out of a mild depression after. So.
All right, Chuck, you're up next.
All right, my question is, in jumping out of a plane, besides that, what do you do for fun? You need a break, man. You're going to hang, maybe with your kids or your boys or whatever. But besides jumping out of a plane, man, what are you into besides ministry, coaching, and all that?
Yep, I do love extreme things. I love being outside. Love being in nature. So a couple things, my boys and I, so I determined my father died when he was 42 and I'm 42 this year. Yeah. And I determined that I was going to be active. And I thank God for my health that I'm able to be really active with my boys and keep up with them. So they're 17 and 14. So we like to surf. And we go to one of the most famous surf spots in the world, San Onofre, or we call it Sano. The locals call it Sano. It's a breeding ground for great white sharks. So I think we're swimming with those pretty often, but it's the best waves, man. So we go out there and we catch those, and it's a pretty remote area. My son, he sliced his foot open last year on some rock or something in the bottom. It's about a 1.5 mile walk. He had 12 stitches in the bottom of his foot. So we had to walk that road back.
Oh, man.
Emergency. So we're always doing crazy stuff.
Yeah. Like swim with sharks, jumping out of planes, putting pastors into churches.
Man. Yeah, so my boys live in LA and they have just started messing around with surfing. And Clay, my youngest, he's 23, 22. I'm going to get in trouble. But he actually had something happen where a riptide took him.
Really?
And he was like freaking out. His friend had to jump in, pull him out. He's never been so scared in all his life. But I used to surf a little bit when I was in Australia, so I understand that world. And he's been back out since, but it freaked him out. If you get into one of them, it can really mess you up.
Rips are no fun, man. No fun at all. Yeah. We actually swam with sharks, though, in Hawaii as a family. We got in cages back in October. So I brought my whole family.
Dude, you're an animal.
And everything. Yeah.
For fun. That was for fun.
So I lived in Florida for a summer and way back in the day, and went to Sebastian Inlet and surfed a couple times. But one of my scariest moments was on a boogie board, and it was storming, and we were out there. And I got flipped upside down under the wave, and I didn't know which way was up or down. And I had a panic attack.
Okay, my last question.
All right, sorry.
Biggest for you, the biggest difference between Chicago and Southern California?
I mean, it's the easiest thing to say, but it's the weather, it's the climate. Yeah. We love Chicago. We love the people. Most of our family and friends are all within a few hours of there for many years, for 20 some years of our adult life almost. And so to be here has been amazing. The opportunity, our Slingshot headquarters are out here now. Novus Global, the executive coaching firm I also do work with, is in Los Angeles. So all of those things make, my work, it makes sense. But it's the climate, in Chicago, you live under a cloud for months and months and months. And here, man, guys, you don't want to hear it. I'm looking outside. I got windows around me, and there's not a cloud in the sky.
Man, so I picked the wrong state to plant a church in. I'll tell you that.
Now, but do you miss the fall? Like that type of change of season? Because my boys, they found that weird last year, like that no fall. Now they hated the snow and stuff, but one of my boys came back at Thanksgiving just to feel that, the fall, the pumpkins and the, what I mean, all that. Do you miss that, or are you like, nah, I'm done?
You know what? We get the best of both the way I see it, because in the evenings here, it gets cool because we're about 6 miles inland from the coast.
Okay.
So we get some of that desert evening sort of cool. And then our winter months here can be quite a chill. So we'll go outside during the day, even with a hoodie on. So it can actually feel like a little bit like fall.
Go outside and put a hoodie on. I'm out.
Minus 10. I think you need a bit more for us than that.
When we first moved here, we went out and I think it was December when we first moved here. And so we went to like a local they were having like a little Christmas celebration thing, and we went, and people had parkas on, and we just moved from Chicago, and so it was 51 degrees. I'll never forget it. And people had parkas on, and we were cracking up. And now here we are, all these years later, wearing parkas when it's 50, because it doesn't take long to acclimate. But.
Right. Man.
Well, Keith, thank you so much for being on Revival Town podcast today and taking the time to chat with us. I know you've blessed so many listening, and we pray this isn't the last time we'll have you on again down the road, but we do thank you for being on Revival Town today.
Thank you, guys. Such an honor to be with you. Appreciate the invitation. Looking forward to being back sometime.
What do you think, mate?
Hey, you know what? Excellent stuff. Great practical steps for pastors and ministry leaders. As I shared, I was, taking some notes, and obviously enjoyed Keith's story. And we didn't push the book, but if you enjoyed his testimony, he has a memoir. His book is called "You Found Me: God's Relentless Pursuit to Find You."
Wow.
And it is available on Amazon, and I recommend that you check it out. You can download the Kindle version as well. But, thank you, Scott. Thank you, Keith. I said Scott. Well, I don't even know where that came from. Thank you. Thank you. I'm looking at my computer, and there doesn't even say Scott anywhere.
This is the story of our lives, people.
My Scott, I think it's time for taking his mate.
Oh, yeah, it's Tate his mate. For those you may be listening for the first time, this is where I try and throw an English word or phrase at...
Or rhyming Cockney slang.
Rhyming Cockney slang. Were you trying that again? What were you on about there? What were you saying?
What?
What were you saying then?
I don't even know. I'm just making. I just know the last word is slang.
Yeah.
Hey, rhyming Cockney slang. What is it? Rhyming Cockney slang. I don't know. I just know there's 3 words, and the last one is slang.
Oh man! So what we do?
Not sling.
Slang.
Slingshot. I'm going to just start Slingshot Group.
Just like. Well, I've got one today, and I don't know if you'll get this or not, but you want me to put it into context?
Absolutely.
They threw bog roll over the house.
What?
They threw bog roll over the house.
Bog roll?
Bog roll.
Bog roll over the house.
B-O-G, roll.
Bog roll. They threw bog roll over the house. They threw bog roll. Is this some kind of ball?
No, it's not.
Bog,
it's not.
Okay. It's bog roll over the house.
Bog roll.
Over the house. I don't know. Is it condemned?
No.
Okay.
I love this because you're not going to get it, are you?
I'm not even.
Bog
roll. That's weird, man.
Bog roll.
Yeah, bog roll.
Yeah,
bog roll over the house.
Let me put it in another context. Okay, you ready? Are you ready?
Yeah. Yep.
You use it every day.
Dog mace. Okay. No, bog roll over the house. Well, I don't use it, but it's used in your house a lot. Air freshener. Oh man, no, bog roll over the house. I have no idea.
No, it is great.
I'm seriously, I'm stumped.
All right, well,
you use it every day inside a house. So I was thinking, I thought you said the first time you use it in a sentence, I thought you meant you throw something over the house, but no, this was throughout the house.
Yeah,
use it every day throughout the house.
Yeah,
not the outhouse. That's a different bog roll.
All right,
and you just drop a bog roll.
And you did?
All right, what?
You just said it. Bog roll is toilet paper.
Oh, you gotta be kidding me. Yeah. Oh, Yeah. I bet you some of our listeners got it. I did. I'm a little slow.
So bog roll is toilet paper. Go and get the bog roll. So, like when you TP a house, you throw it over.
Okay. I was
trying to throw you off a bit. Yeah. You know what I mean?
You were trying to throw the bog roll. You did throw me off. Oh, man.
So there you go. Well,
that was fun. Thanks for listening.
Tate and his mate. And make sure that you are tuning in again next week for another fun episode, another fun time with Tate and his mate. And Chuck, is there anything that the people need to know about with regards to our social media?
If you... I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I got bog roll wrapped around my head.
I love throwing something at him when he's not ready for it. Do you remember the question?
We would say this. Let us know. Communicate with us and let us know maybe who you'd like us to interview. And let us know, what you'd like us to talk about. Because we would love to hear from you. We do this for you, so we'd love to connect with you. On our Instagram is Revival Town Podcast. Or really all of our socials are, but or you can leave us a message on our website too, revivaltownpodcast.com, and you can leave us a voice recording, and if you do that, we might even play it on a forthcoming episode. So anyway, but just want to say thank you for listening.
And you may be listening, and you may have a connection with someone. What are you laughing at?
You may be listening. Right, or they could be watching, right?
Well, they could be watching.
Yeah. So that makes sense.
I tell you, I'm going to slap you in a minute.
I know, you're going to throw a bog roll at my head.
But you may be listening or watching, and you may know of someone, may have written a book, maybe someone that's making a difference. Now, again, we can't have everyone on the podcast, and I'll be honest with you, there's not many that we have on locally. In Peoria on this, and that's not because we don't, it's not like we don't like people from Peoria. We just don't want it
just a handful of people.
Yeah, we just don't want it to become the Peoria podcast. We want to make sure that people are hearing from people who are making a difference globally.
Yep.
So if you know of someone, you've got a connection, shoot us a DM or an email connecting us with them, and we'll try and get them on the podcast. That's happened quite a few times.
It has. So let's do it.
So make sure you're doing that. Chuck, it is great to do this again with you.
Absolutely. Thanks to our guest, Keith Robinson, and thank you, Edify, for always helping us out as well, and for you, the listener.
All right. Well, we'll see you next week, mate.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Revival Town Podcast. Make sure you're following us on social media and remember to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. For more information, head on over to revivaltownpodcast.com.